Trouble on the campaign trail. Donald Trump's missteps give Hillary Clinton a boost. Taking down the mob, the feds file charges against dozens of alleged gangsters. Stopping the spread of the Zika virus, why the government may run out of money. And Olympic dreams. A new sport prepares for its time in the spotlight on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, August 5th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump makes a rare move, admitting he was wrong. It's a continuation of a tough week for the Trump campaign, sagging poll numbers, feuds with fellow Republicans, and former CIA head Michael Morell endorsing Clinton. Our Jason Calvi reports tonight from the campaign trail here in Washington, D.C. Jason.
That's right, Lauren. The trail takes us right here to Washington, D.C., to a gathering of Black and Hispanic journalists. The Hillary Clinton answered a few of their questions today, but journalists have been complaining that Hillary Clinton hasn't had a formal press conference since December. Still, Donald Trump's troubles this week seem to be taking a toll on his poll numbers.
Donald Trump claimed he saw a video of the U.S. giving $400 million cash to Iran.
The tape is of the people taking the money off the plane.
Today, in a rare reversal, he tweets, it was actually video of American hostages landing in Switzerland.
Thank you, everybody.
That's not his only problem. Trump is sinking in the latest polls taken this week. An NBC Wall Street Journal poll has Hillary Clinton at 47, Trump at 38. Clinton is up 10 points in the Fox News poll, and take a look at the McClatchy-Maris poll, showing Clinton with a 15-point lead.
The poll should be a wake-up call to Mr. Trump. He's losing to a person who people believe is a liar. He's losing to a person that people don't trust.
We hope we'll have a fair election. Donald Trump is a campaigner and a warrior. The numbers had him up not long ago. He's down some now, and I think you'll see a rebound, and no doubt about it, heading into November.
The polls aren't all good for Clinton either. A new Gen Forward poll finds 54% of white 18 to 30-year-olds think Clinton intentionally broke the law with her private email server used during her time as Secretary of State. And today, she was asked.
A majority of voters consistently say, frankly, they don't like you and they don't trust you.
Every time I have done a job, people have counted on me and trusted me.
Donald Trump is already questioning if the November election might be rigged. President Obama says that's ridiculous.
I've never heard of somebody complaining about being cheated before the game was over, or before the scores even tallied.
And Donald Trump tweets that President Obama should ask the Democratic National Committee how they rigged the system against Bernie Sanders. There was one piece of good news for Donald Trump this week. He and the Republican National Committee reported raising $82 million in the month of July. Donald Trump saying it was mostly small donations. Lauren?
Jason, and that upset the Hillary Clinton campaign. Thank you very much, Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. That Gen Forward poll also shows most young people don't believe either party represents them. Still, the Democratic Party holds an advantage in appealing to young people of color, while young whites feel left out by both parties. Joining us right now to discuss, Melinda Henneberger is a political commentator, Dr. Robert Jones, the founder and CEO of Public Religion Research Institute. Welcome to the program.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What a week. What a wild week for Donald Trump in the polls. Is this, Melinda, going to be that week in August where we say that was the time when the campaign put a knife in it?
You know, we'll never know till we get to
till we're in November,
till it's in
right?
hindsight. But it certainly does feel like, and we have said this over and over, so I think we're a little wary to say, oh yes, this is going to be the one. We have said that about any number of statements Trump has made. But I really do feel like going after a Gold Star family was something that a lot of Republicans had a lot of trouble with, and that the moment where they said, could he please stop digging?
Robert?
Yeah. No, I think, rule number one is don't die of self-inflicted wounds on the campaign trail. And I think, Trump has just stepped on mine after mine after mine this week, and really seemed like he was sort of looking for fights where, with the Gold Star family, with very respected, the leaders of his party, McCain and Ryan, kind of refusing to endorse them, and then leaving Mike Pence in this awkward situation of having
I'll endorse you.
oh yes, I'll endorse you, but Trump gave me permission to do that.
Right.
And it just looks like the campaign is really in disarray.
Completely
and
off
I think
message.
that is a real problem for the Trump campaign.
Good. I agree. I think Hillary Clinton has had her share of bad weeks and bad problems, but this week I think is going to go down in history as one of the worst of his campaign. Let's move on to these polls. You saw the shocking number. The spread goes anywhere from 15% actually to the Real Clear Politics average, which is 6%. Do you think that this can go any farther apart?
Sure. I think that the interesting thing to me is that Hillary Clinton did not have a particularly wonderful convention. I think it's amazing that she hasn't gotten a bigger bounce given, as you say, the self-inflicted wounds in the Trump campaign. So I do still think there's a contest here, even with it. I think what you see in the numbers is two very flawed, weak candidates.
Let's dive into these polls on the Catholic side. That is your specialty at the Public Religion Research Institute. Let's talk about the Catholics and how they are polling.
Yeah. Well, it's been true that the Catholic vote has really sort of gone with the winner of the election for, the past few election cycles, and that's become kind of a bellwether constituency to watch. What's interesting, though, is that there is this big divide between white Catholics and Latino Catholics, and it's getting wider in this election cycle. So, maybe no surprise that among Latino Catholics, Trump's unfavorability rating is 89%.
Thanks to immigration.
Thanks to immigration, building a wall. And while Hillary's is only 32%. In fact, 2/3 of Latinos have a favorable view of Hillary Clinton. But here's the interesting part. 61% of both white Catholics and Latino Catholics have an unfavorable, 61% of white Catholics have an unfavorable view of both Trump and Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Their unfavorables are identical.
Which goes back to your point, Melinda, which is that they are both very flawed candidates in the minds of American voters. Yeah. And I think that usually at this point in the election season, we start to see wild swings, but then it tightens out as we get close to November. I look forward to hearing from both of you as we get closer to Election Day. Thank you so much, Robert Jones and Melinda Henneberger.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Prosecutors crack down on an East Coast mob ring. They filed charges against nearly 4 dozen suspects. The suspects are accused of a laundry list of classic mafia crimes, including extortion, loan sharking, and gambling, and modern-day crimes like healthcare and credit card fraud. The mob ring reportedly stretched from New York and New Jersey to Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Florida. This gentleman, Bradford Wedra, is just one of the people facing charges.
I think it was terrible that they railroaded us like that, and me personally, because I turned myself in when the cops were looking for me in 1980 to go do 25 years, so I ain't no risk fight. Right.
Among those charged was Joseph Skinny Joey Merlino, the alleged head of the Philadelphia mob who had repeatedly beat murder charges in the past. And the terrorist truck attack in Nice last month claims another life, bringing the death toll to 85. Pierre Hatterman, a French psychologist, was 56. Hatterman's wife and his 13-year-old son were killed when a Tunisian man drove a truck into a crowd on the famous Nice promenade as tens of thousands gathered for Bastille Day on July 14th. The attack was claimed by the Islamic State group. France is on edge with fears of a new terrorist attack. And hundreds of people gathered to say goodbye to an 18-year-old Italian girl who died of meningitis after attending World Youth Day in Krakow, Poland. The funeral for Susanna Ruffi was held at a Catholic church in Rome where the girl used to play the organ during Sunday Mass. Ruffi was taken to a hospital in Vienna on her way home from Poland and died the next morning. It is still unclear when and where she contracted meningitis. Attorneys say they will fight Turkey's request for the U.S. to extradite a Turkish cleric living in Pennsylvania. The president of Turkey accuses Fethullah Gulen of leading last month's military coup attempt. Gulen has denied any involvement, and his attorneys say even if he was sent back to Turkey, he would never get a fair trial.
It would be unprecedented and appalling if the United States took a frail, almost octogenarian, plopped him on a plane to go back into that kind of setting with the hideous things that are being said about him by the entire Turkish government.
Since the coup attempt, nearly 70,000 people suspected of links to Gulen have been suspended or dismissed from their jobs in Turkey. Secretary of State John Kerry plans to visit Turkey later this month. The Zika virus spreads to California. The health department there reports 2 babies born with Zika-related birth defects after their pregnant mothers caught the virus while traveling abroad. This comes as Florida wages war on virus-spreading mosquitoes.
Zika is present. Zika is dangerous.
Congresswoman Federica Wilson is underscoring the Zika virus threat facing the U.S. as officials in the past week have discovered the first locally transmitted cases in Florida. This as state authorities launch a massive air war on the mosquitoes spreading the virus.
We're doing aerial spraying for adulticide, which basically helps control the adult population of mosquitoes. There's going to be 4 cycles of this. Today was our first mission on adulticide over a 10 square mile area. And we're going to follow up with larvicide over a 2 square mile area, and we'll do that 4 times, once a week for 4 weeks.
Flanking the local fight against mosquitoes, a federal effort to test a possible vaccine.
The NIH just announced the first clinical trials in humans.
Despite the government's work on a vaccine, some, including Florida Governor Rick Scott, are frustrated with Washington's lack of help on the current outbreak.
Is it disappointing the federal government has not done theirs? Yeah, it's disappointing. Who didn't know that we're having travel-related Zika in this country? We knew this was going to happen.
The president pointing the finger at Congress for going on vacation before approving his funding request to fight the virus.
This is not the time for politics. Congress needs to do its job. Fighting Zika costs money. Now the money that we need to fight Zika is rapidly running out. The situation is getting critical.
In June, Democratic senators blocked Zika funding in part because it didn't give money to Planned Parenthood. Coming up, Christ the Redeemer. The Olympic torch travels to one of Rio's most iconic sites. And Knights of Columbus, what should matter to Catholics in this presidential election. The Olympic torch arrives at one of Rio de Janeiro's most iconic landmarks. And Cardinal Dom Orani Tempesta, the Archbishop of Rio, and the mayor joined in the celebration at the base of the Christ Redeemer statue. We'll have more Olympic coverage coming up in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. People in New Orleans clean up from a tornado. It left a path of destruction across several neighborhoods and caused at least 2 abandoned houses to collapse. 2 people were injured. Relief workers are trying an unusual new way to reach refugees in Syria. They're using cranes to deliver supplies across the border from Jordan. The cranes are hoisting huge white bags filled with rice, lentils, and dates into Syrian tent camps. Tens of thousands of displaced Syrians have been cut off from outside help for almost 2 months. The head of the Knights of Columbus says Catholics can't vote for pro-abortion politicians. Speaking at their annual convention in Toronto this week, Supreme Knight Carl Anderson said abortion outweighs all political issues. The Knights of Columbus is the world's largest Catholic fraternal organization. John Allen, veteran Vatican journalist, is the editor of Crux. He covered the Knights of Columbus convention this week and joins us now from Denver. Good to be home, right, John?
Lauren, it was fantastic to be at Krakow for World Youth Day. It was great to be in Toronto for the Knights Convention, which, by the way, is not just a convention. It is their supreme convention. Both of those experiences were terrific, but of course, it's always great to sleep in one day.
Let's talk about the presidential election. I know Supreme Knight Carl Anderson spoke out. It has been a rough and tumble one and a tough week for Donald Trump and his relationship with the Republican Party. What did Carl Anderson say?
Well, Anderson, in delivering his what basically amounts to his State of the Union address for the Knights, reiterated something he had said in 2008, basically that it is time to stop making excuses for pro-choice Catholic politicians, and that abortion is unlike other political issues because of the killing it involves on a vast scale. He talked about 40 million deaths of unborn children due to abortion over the last couple of decades, and talked about the number of cities that would be depopulated if you had killing on that scale. And the bottom line was the argument that abortion deserves a kind of pride of place in the way that Catholics think about their political choices.
And I think that he's most likely referring to Hillary Clinton's running mate, Tim Kaine, who says, Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, who says, yes, he is pro-life personally, but not so when it comes to politics. Also, he talked a lot about conscience rights. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, basically, we're living in a legislative and political landscape in the United States and in other parts of the West where traditional positions are losing a lot of fights. I mean, gay marriage being the most recent example. And so the question is, in such a cultural milieu, what space is there for people who dissent from those positions to be true to their own beliefs and not to be completely tossed out of public life? You know, obviously the Kim Davis case in Kentucky would illustrate that. You know, Carl Anderson was making the argument that the protection of conscience is a fundamental American value. And the language he used is that it has to be at the center of social life and not kind of exiled to the margins. And to sort of back that up, Lauren, the Knights of Columbus this year gave their Gaudium et Spes Award, which is basically the Congressional Medal of Honor for the Knights. It's the highest honor they have to bestow. It was originally given to Mother Teresa in 1992. They gave it this year to the Little Sisters of the Poor, which was, of course, in part about the charism of the Little Sisters to care for the elderly and all the great work that they do. But it clearly was also a statement about the stand that the Little Sisters take and are continuing to take against the contraception mandates imposed by the Obama administration as part of healthcare reform.
Well, John, I know you've been busy traveling the world covering the issues that matter to Catholics. Enjoy your own bed. John Allen from Crux. Up next, tall challenge. Climbing becomes a new Olympic sport. And ties between the Olympics and the Bible. We'll tell you about a new reading program. A beautiful sunny morning in Rio de Janeiro. The Olympic host city is hoping to shine over the next 2 weeks despite serious concerns over water pollution and crime. The opening ceremony takes place tonight. And thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Millions of television viewers from around the world, including my family room, are expected to watch the 3-hour opening ceremony. Brazil will showcase its traditions and environmental wonders like the Amazon rainforest. 4,800 performers and volunteers will pull off the production inside Rio's Maracana Stadium. And Pope Francis expresses his support. At Pontifex sent a tweet today saying, "Good luck to the athletes at Rio 2016. May you always be messengers of goodwill and true sporting spirit." The Olympics in Rio are just starting, but Tokyo is already making plans for the Summer Games, and that includes new sports. You need a head for heights for this sport. Sport climbing is the latest Olympic event, having just been approved by Olympic leaders. It's added to the program of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Shauna Coxey is an expert sports climber who trains 40 hours per week. She won first place at the 2015 Bouldering World Cup in Munich, Germany. Now she hopes to compete in the 2020 Olympics.
The prospect is really exciting, and yeah, I can't imagine how it would feel to be part of the games and to join that such a small elite group of people who've got to experience such a prestigious event.
Rob Addy of the British Mountaineering Council says climbing appeals to a wide range of people.
Most climbers treat climbing as a sport. Some people treat it as a pastime. Some people treat it as a full-on lifestyle, depending on how you get into it. But there are so many different aspects to climbing. Climbing a Himalayan mountain or an alpine mountain is very different to pulling on plastic indoors. People can choose exactly what they want to do within climbing, and that's one of the best things about it, really.
Bonita Norris is an accomplished mountain climber who has scaled Mount Everest. She says sports climbing requires a great deal of athleticism.
People say Everest is hard and think it's impossible, but I've climbed Everest and I can tell you that the kind of climbing that these guys are doing is way harder. They're climbing super steep, overhanging walls, hanging on by their fingertips. Their bodies are contorting into these crazy positions. The tension that they need to be able to hold these moves is just incredible.
And no thank you. But other newly added sports include the return of baseball, softball, and the introduction of skateboarding, surfing, and karate. Now, as athletes aim for the gold in Rio, one museum releases a 15-day reading program that links the Olympics with the Bible. The Museum of the Bible says the good book helped inspire the modern Olympic Games. Stephen Bickley is vice president of the Museum of the Bible. He joins us now from Oklahoma City. It's scheduled to open 3 blocks from the Capitol in November of next year. What is the Museum of the Bible?
We're a new nonprofit that is building a museum in D.C., and we're dedicated to one thing, and that's inviting all people to engage with the Bible, with its history, narrative, and impact.
And I understand that you are going to release very soon a special Olympics-themed program. What is the program? There's a Bible Olympics connection? I never would have thought that.
That's the interesting stories that we get to tell, and that's why we're telling it. We've created several products. We have 15 different 1-minute features on it, and we've rolled it into a 25-minute radio special. And it just talks about the connection of the Bible to the Olympics. And for example, the modern Olympics came out of a movement from some Catholic seminarians and a movement called Muscular Christianity. And it was the predecessor to the modern Olympic Games.
There are some Olympians that I've heard of, gymnast Shannon Miller, track star Lolo Jones, who say that they were inspired by the Bible. Will they be part of this museum or part of this new reading and listening program?
Yeah, that is one of the stories we tell. I really like Shannon Miller's story. She would, as doing her floor exercise, she would get to the last pass and be very exhausted. And she would remember a verse from 2 Samuel that would give her the energy, the courage, and the inspiration to stick her final landing. And obviously, it has made her the most decorated women's Olympian gymnastic ever.
I know, and the opening ceremonies are tonight. How can people hear about this themed programming? Where can we go to listen to it?
It's off our website at museumofthebible.org/Olympics. They can also find it on YouVersion. It's under the reading plans of YouVersion.
Great. And is there a Catholic component to the Museum of the Bible? What would that be?
Well, we invite all people to engage with the Bible, and we have great relationships with the Catholic Church. We've had 2 of our traveling museum exhibits there at the Vatican, and the Church was very gracious and opened doors for us to exhibit in Cuba. And so we've gone and exhibited in Cuba twice, and we've exhibited once at a seminary in Buenos Aires.
How was that received? I spent some time in Cuba with the president earlier this year.
It was great. The people there, they've been deprived of the Bible for 100 years. And of course, you can't deprive anyone. But they were fascinated and came out in droves, many of them waiting hours in line to learn more about the Bible.
And let's hope that's the case here in 2017 when the Museum of the Bible opens in Washington, D.C. Stephen Bickley, thank you so much for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
For all of the EWTN News Nightly team, including executive producer Susie Pinto, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Follow us on Twitter at EWTN, and you can follow me at Lauren Ashburn. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. We'll leave you tonight with an aerial view of the Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro. Good night, and God bless.